So I wouldn't put too much stock into the weather today, but it could certainly affect turnout just on the margins.
Okay, well, when we consider those who New Yorkers may feel passionate about turning out for, your latest primary leading up, or poll rather, leading up to the primary today found that there was more support for Cuomo at 35%, with Mamdani at 32%. But in ranked choice voting, a simulation over 8 rounds, it's actually Mamdani who was in the lead, 52 to 48 for Cuomo. So how should we be considering that dynamic as we await these results coming in, knowing that if no one gets over 50%, this is going into more rounds?
Yeah, and I do expect this to go into more rounds past the first round, certainly. We had 8 rounds in our polling. As you said, Cuomo at 35 in the initial ballot, Mamdani at 32. And, when we get to that 7th round, we see that Cuomo has a slight lead at 41, Mamdani at 39, and then Lander at 20%. So that Lander vote is really what determines the final round. And in this case, we find that Mamdani benefits the most there. He gets to 52% with Cuomo at 48.
Wow. I'm compelled by this idea, and this has a lot to do, I guess, with New York politics more than anything, that today may not actually be conclusive at all. When we consider what could happen, Matt, Cuomo and Mamdani could still choose to run as independents or with a third party, setting up the potential for a 4-way race with Eric Adams. How likely is that to happen?
Well, I don't want to speak for the campaigns and the individuals and what their intentions are, but it does seem like we are set up for a potential messy situation in the general election. I think, it seems likely that Cuomo wants to run regardless. I'm not sure about Mamdani, but, regardless of what we see tonight, I think that once we do get into that ranked choice, we're going to see pretty close election results here. So, I really don't think that there's going to be an overwhelming victory for one or the other.
Well, when we consider the factors that ultimately may determine this outcome, in terms of issues in particular, and what these various candidates, not just, of course, the frontrunners, but all 11 candidates in this primary trying to differentiate themselves on, what appears to be resonating the most with New York City voters?
Well, I think that housing is probably the top issue right now for New York voters. The Mamdani campaign has really taken that and run with it. I think that's why we've seen his campaign have such a trajectory. I mean, in February, when we first started polling the race, Mamdani was at 1 or 2%, and now he's at 32% in that initial vote. So I think it's clear that that message has been breaking through. I don't know that Cuomo's messaging on that has broken through as much. He's sort of stayed around this 35% mark throughout the election. But I think that is top of mind for voters right now.
Matt Taglia, the idea of ranked choice voting is still somewhat foreign to a good number of our viewers and listeners. Does it change your job as a pollster when it comes to predicting the outcome of these races?
Yeah, it absolutely does. For one, when we conduct this poll, we try to emulate the New York ballot as closely as we can. And so we ask votes for their top 5 choices, eliminating whoever their previous choice was. And so when we get that data back, it's a little bit of a mess, frankly, but we have ways of simulating exactly what New York will do when they count these ballots, when they tabulate these ranked choice tabulations. And so there is a bit more work that goes into it. And as far as interpreting the results, that's tough because as you see, we have to go through 8 rounds in order to get to a majority winner. And we have to consider each and every single candidate and where their vote is going to go. So in this case, though, I think it's most helpful to look at these final rounds where we have Lander around 20% in the second to last, and how that vote ends up splitting, which is about 2 to 1 in our polling for Mamdani versus Cuomo.
Well, I also wonder how financing and funding of these campaigns in a ranked choice system factors in. And I should note on funding that Michael R. Bloomberg, the founder and majority owner of Bloomberg LP, which is the parent company of this network, has contributed to a PAC supporting Andrew Cuomo. He has endorsed him. But how should we be considering the money factor in this race in particular?
I think that the money factor is certainly important, but I think there's also something to be said for grassroots campaigns and energy on the ground. You know, that's something that money can't necessarily capture. Money absolutely matters, certainly, but there's that grassroots element. There's a strategic element here. You know, as we said, with ranked choice voting, this is very different from a typical primary or typical general election. You're ultimately going to be dependent upon folks who aren't casting a ballot for you in the first place, right? So you want to make sure that you're the second or third or fourth or fifth choice for those folks as well. So there's a lot to it. There are a lot of elements at play here, and funding, again, very important, but strategy and a strong ground game, I think, are what really, really make the difference here.